It has now been 3 weeks since the start of this conflict with Israel and Hamas, and I'm really now asking the question, what is it going to take for both of these sides to realize that there is no military solution to this problem, this political problem? And to the wider world, we need to really make note of the fact that all of the chess pieces right now are moving in the direction of a wider regional conflict that could perhaps be the spark of a World War III, the last thing that the planet needs. And of course, we already have another World War III flashpoint right now, Ukraine and Russia and everything that has been going on there for now far too long. We need to reevaluate precisely what is going on here and the disastrous possibility of escalation. I'm Stuart Hooper. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Follow my page if you are new here on X as well, where I'm also now posting videos. I'm a lecturer, a researcher, and coming at international politics from a very critical angle. And when it comes to the Israel-Palestine conflict, there really is nothing else like this on planet Earth right now in the arena of geopolitics, where it is incredibly hard to find anybody that is clearly in the right. Now, Israel suffered a horrific terrorist attack where you had kids that were at a music festival that found themselves under attack by paragliding gunmen. You had towns and cities that came under attack as well. We have somewhere in the region of 1,400 dead Israelis, over 5,000 wounded, which is a stat that's often left out, and 200 taken hostage. Now, if you're Israel, do you want to respond to that? Absolutely. Should you respond to that? Absolutely. I don't take the position of a pacifist. I think you should be able to defend yourself, and I think everyone and every nation has a right to do so. The question is, how should you defend yourself? Because what we have seen over the last 3 weeks are 2.2 million people put under a state of siege where they have had no real access to water or electricity or fuel or the internet to communicate with the wider world. All of this stuff has been gone. We've had a massive aerial bombardment campaign that has left somewhere in the region of 7,000 people dead and 19,000 wounded. So now we're asking the question, what exactly is going on here? What is the objective? Was the objective to kill more Palestinians than Israelis died in that horrific terrorist attacks? Well, if so, that objective has now clearly been accomplished. But more importantly, what has any of this achieved for either side? This has set back the Palestinian cause decades, and Israel, if it was smart about its response to this attack, could have had the entire world on its side to go and resolve the problem, as opposed to imposing what a lot of people, I think, are accurately arguing is collective punishment on an entire group of 2.2 million people, half of which are children. And by the way, any nation where half of the people are children, that means they do not have a very high life expectancy, and they are already living in hellish conditions. So this really is the last thing that Gaza needed. But of course, the terror attack was the last thing that Israel needed as well. So this is what I mean about when we look at issues like this. We've got to be critical and look at both sides. And clearly, both sides are in the wrong here. And this goes back decades and decades and decades. I'm not going to get into the history of that now because we'll be here forever. But this history, in its modern iteration, does not begin post-World War II. It goes far further back than that to the late 1800s. In the late 1800s, this is where this modern problem began with the movement of Jewish Zionists into what was then Palestine. and then an eruption of tensions that went back and forth. And even if you go all the way back then to the late 1800s, early 1900s, there were terror attacks that were taking place from both sides against one another. This is a situation that honestly has not really been my issue. I've been primarily focused on American foreign policy post-World War II. Of course, there's some Israeli stuff in that, but the Israel-Palestine issue has not really been a concern of mine in my studies. It's been a bit outside of my own expertise. I've always kept an eye on this stuff, always paid close attention to it, but you have to look at this and consider where we're going here, because this really has the potential for disastrous escalation. As I sit here talking to you today, again on the 3-week anniversary of the disastrous terror attack that Israel suffered, we're now looking at a ground invasion that is taking place in Gaza. And Channel 4 News out of the UK, which has been posting excellent reports on this conflict, they had their senior foreign affairs correspondent relaying the fact that she had heard an Israeli official saying they were going to turn Gaza City into a parking lot. In other words, they were going to flatten the whole thing and then send in the tanks, the troops, and clear up, I suppose, any survivors. If Israel does this, which it may very well be engaged in right now, again, as I sit here at this table, this is the current state of the news, that this is escalating, that the ground invasion is occurring right now. This is not going to solve this problem. Think on 2 levels. You have a massive young population. A population that had nothing to do with the rise of Hamas in Gaza as a leadership, if you can call it that. A leadership force and a group of elites that really control Gaza. They had nothing to do with that. And now you're bombing them to hell. You're about to invade them. How do you think they're going to view this as they grow up and enter into adult lives? Are they just going to forget about this? No, they're not. You are opening the door to generations of more problems. But of course, if Hamas had not conducted this attack to begin with, we wouldn't even be having this discussion. And the second important point here that comes from this ground invasion, that again is probably happening right now as I sit here at this table speaking to you, this is inviting a wider conflict. If Hezbollah starts to invade Israel from the north, and by the way, during the last time Hezbollah and Israel clashed militarily, Hezbollah came out on top, and rather significantly. This is going to be a disaster, because you are inviting Iran to openly get even closer to Hezbollah, to Hamas, and to push these forces even further down Israel's throat. And what is that going to do? It's going to bring the Americans in. It's going to bring the British in. It's going to bring the French in. Oh, and by the way, who else has sent warships into this region over the past week? China. So we have Iran, we have China, we have Russia in Syria, Syria who's supported by Iran, and Iran who's supporting Hezbollah, who's fighting Israel. Do you see how this is going to go? The dominoes are going to collapse, and here we go again. When is this going to end? I have absolutely no idea, but it's certainly not going to end well. Please subscribe to the channel if you are new. Follow me on X if you are new, where I'm posting these videos full for the first time. I'm really hoping X is going to take off as a great platform for posting videos. YouTube, for want of a better term, is a complete disaster in terms of getting reach, getting audience. So we're going to be dual posting. Thank you guys for making it to the end of this video. Be sure to share it everywhere you can if you thought this was helpful. I would appreciate it, and I'm going to be back with very regular videos on this issue. I'm going to aim for every other day, but if I can get it to daily, that is going to be the plan, because it's time to inject, hopefully, a voice of critical reason, which a lot of people have seemingly forgotten that that was a good approach to international issues, as we've seen a lot of, unfortunately, America first people become Israel first people over the last 3 weeks, but that's another issue that we'll come to at another time. Thank you guys all for watching, and I'll talk to you again real soon.